So, as we head to the elections at the end of May, there are many questions about whether the government after that elections will improve governance and, as a result, improve the implementation of human rights in our country. One of the key questions is whether different political parties will be able to work together in national government and what kind of relationship they will have. At the moment, you've seen how the DA and the ANC have never really worked together in a province or in local government. In places like Ekurhuleni, the ANC and the EFF have been fighting in that working relationship. Dr Ebrahim Harvey is a political commentator. Dr Harvey, good afternoon to you. We've all seen, I don't know, can I call them the disasters of governance in Joburg and eThekwini and Ekurhuleni? You suggest national government wouldn't be quite like that. Why do you believe that?
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for the invite and good afternoon to your viewers. No, you know, I spell out in the column the answer to your question, Stephen. You must remember the ANC has never lost a national election. So they absolutely now, I get more convinced by the day that they're going to lose this election and they're going to lose it considerably below 50%. I'm looking now at 40 to 45%. More optimistic. The more pessimistic scenario is that they might even drop so bad is it below 40. But to answer your question, it's a fundamentally different sphere and realm of government. Something which is virtually virgin territory. We have never had it before in this country because, as I said in the column, the ANC strode the political stage like a colossus. The first time they started to go down was 2004, 2019, you've seen 57%, and very importantly, very few analysts pay attention to it analytically. They lost the 2016 and 2021 local government elections consecutively. It's never happened before. That was the biggest electoral defeat for the ANC, and too little attention is paid to its significance. And I believe it's going to inform. It's only 3 years ago, Stephen, the 2021. So 3 years later, things have got considerably worse. But because it is, you see, the primary responsibility, which is where the most explosive struggles have taken place. Just look at what's happening in Phoenix the past week and what's happened around the country, and in fact much more so fiercely after the 2021 local government. It's really where the rubber hits the tarmac, to use that expression. It's just been explosive, and the instability, as you pointed to, Ekurhuleni, Joburg, all over, there's been serious problems. The falsity of trying to draw an analogy and to draw an extension from that local combustible level to what will transpire at national level, it doesn't hold water. It doesn't hold water because you're not going to have in Parliament at national level the kind of issues that daily explodes. We can see it. I mean, that's why, Stephen, we're the protest capital of the world. Since June 2004, 21 years, it started in the Free State, unstoppable avalanche of fierce, explosive township protests. So that is not going to happen. Obviously, it's a different sphere. And what will happen is that it depends on the results. You see, the lower the ANC achieves in that poll, say 40 to 45, the more they're going to be compelled. If they drop at all below 50, they're going to be compelled to form a national government of coalition, which will be the first time. And, because it's virgin territory, they're going to have to test various modalities of governance and see what works best, using the Constitution, however, as the guiding light for that. But, those who attempt to say that because of what's happened at local level, you're going to have a repeat at national level with this coalition government, which is now unstoppable and it's inevitable, post 29th May. It doesn't hold water. And I don't want to get deeper into this question now of political science, why I'm holding that view. But that is going to be the situation. Not to say, however, that you're not going to have continuous serious tensions and problems. You've seen what's happened in Parliament, the EFF. I don't think that's going to necessarily stop. In fact, it's possible that because the ANC is forced into a national government of coalition, that they might take things even more seriously than when the ANC ruled almost unilaterally Parliament. Okay. Now when it's forced into a coalition government, that's why I said despite all the problems with the EFF and the DA, if the ANC is compelled to form a coalition government with them, it will act as a countervailing force to this embedded corruption. I can tell you now, you'll see less of it. You'll see a continuation of it. But because the ANC will have to rule alongside the EFF and the DA especially, you're going to see, I believe, a decline in cases of corruption and more where they are forced, not because they want to. Coalitions are not because people love each other. Coalitions are the result of electoral politics where you have divergent views and different conflicting results in elections, and you don't have a single party that commands an overwhelming majority.
So, Dr. Harvey, I mean, how important are personalities to this? Can you really see Julius Malema and Cyril Ramaphosa sitting in the same cabinet? And I mean, and if you can I please come and watch it?
No, I can. I think, Stephen, I've said this before in many articles. I think you misread the EFF. Despite all the drama and shenanigans, etc., I think the EFF, if you listen to Malema, in fact, I think to soften Malema, the EFF, I believe, is going to do very well. I've said it in a previous column. I think the EFF, forget about your subjective views about Malema and the EFF. Objectively speaking, if you see that the root of this crisis we face lies with the black youth, the unemployment is at the worst ever, and it's the very social base that Malema and the EFF appeals to. I foresee the possibility, I'm saying, and strongly by the day, that the EFF even supplants the DA as the official opposition. It's a different ballgame entirely. The ANC is going to be forced to have to deal with the DA and the EFF. And I think, in the nature of the fact that for the first time we have a national government, a coalition government, they're going to be forced to pay attention to what has not happened at local level. Because of this combustibility and the fact that, even when they've had coalition governments, the one thing that has been lacking, which is why this thing has exploded. How can you have a coalition government at any level, especially local government, when you don't have a commonality of policies and programs between the coalition parties? This is part of unexpressed, not dealt with. This, I'll tell you, lies at the bottom partly of why we've had the serious explosions at local government, lack of common program and ideas, at local level.
So, Dr. Harvey, so now, I mean, this is a fun question in a way, I suppose. Which manifestos are more similar? The ANC's manifesto and the EFF's manifesto, or the ANC's manifesto and the DA's manifesto? And I mean...
No, the EFF...
Yeah. I mean, I can see arguments like this that could go on for hours.
Yeah. No, you have to put your question in perspective. I mean, the DA, increasingly I see it acting as a social democrat. Very important issues it has raised, cost of living. The ANC has not, even the EFF has not. But if you talk of radical economic policies, you listen to the ANC, you listen to the EFF, there's more common ground. Malema comes from the ANC. And you can see, because of the crisis, Stephen, increasingly radical talk is pervading our politics because people need solutions, and this is what's happening. Although you may critique it and it's sloganeering, etc. But in answer to your question, there'd be more common ground between the ANC, and you can see around the land question and so on, and the EFF, than there would be between the ANC and the DA. And you just need to read their election manifestos and their policy guidelines to appreciate that the EFF would be closer, I think, to the DA than it would be to the ANC than it would be to the DA.
Could we be asking the wrong question? And Dr. Harvey, let me put this to you. If I were in charge of strategy for the ANC, and I think we can both agree that's never going to happen, but if I were, would it not allow the ANC to have more power to avoid working with a bigger party for as long as possible? So to avoid working with both the DA and the EFF. But actually, to try and get together a group of smaller parties, doesn't matter how many it is, whether you need 5 of them or 6 of them, whatever. Because you would always be able to, can I be frank, bully them. You'd always be able to get what you want if you had a group of smaller parties. But to do it with the bigger parties, harder. So, in a way, do we not need to really focus on that possibility, perhaps, and see how that coalition would be managed? The ANC and a group of, say, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 smaller parties.
Yeah, you must draw a distinction when you pose the question between what the ANC would have liked or wished for, more subjectively speaking, and what in objective terms it will have to contend with. All hangs on, in answer to your question, what the outcome of the elections, what votes the ANC would have vis-à-vis the EFF and the DA. That will determine the strategy of the ANC and whether they'll be forced into a coalition of the EFF and the DA, and the perspective of how that will hold in relation to your question about the smaller parties. The independents and the smaller parties, I think they stand more ground now because of the ANC being in such a big crisis, which is precisely why they've mushroomed and emerged, because they know we're in very serious trouble and see if they can steal some votes from a rapidly declining ANC at the polls. But if you have a handsome, commendable results by both the DA and the EFF, I think it will be foolhardy of the ANC to ignore that and attempt to strike a deal with smaller parties. I don't think it's going to work out that way. I think that the prospects of the ANC, whatever it wants to seek to do, because remember that even if it drops to 40 to 45%, it's still going to be the biggest party of that coalition government. And it will, to some extent, call the shots, but it will depend on what the DA and the EF lands up with. But I think really your question about the smaller independent parties must be seen in relation to it's the obverse side, the other side of where these parties end up. I'm talking primarily, they're the biggest parties, Stephen, whether we like it or not. The DA, ANC, EFF, they dominate parliament. I think the smaller parties altogether won't take more than 5 to 7.5% of the vote. I think you're talking about the rest of it split between the ANC, the DA, and the EFF. And I really must tell you, as much as I'm critical of Malema and the EFF, watch out for the EFF. I won't be surprised at all, believe me, which will alter our politics fundamentally and drive it towards the kind of radical talk you've heard from Malema and the EFF. If the EFF does so well that and it's possible to my mind, that it supplants the DA as the official opposition, it will fundamentally alter our politics. Really, Stephen, that's what I foresee.
Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, thank you, political commentator. Really appreciate the time.